Hey everybody, this is John Eric Bentley, the voice of Baird Wallace from Final Fantasy VII The Remake, Nick Fury from Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, and so many other projects, and you are listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. Yeah.
And I paused. Frick. Anyways.
Great start.
I know, right? All right. Aloha and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast, your destination for entertainment and more. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova. Yes, I said Kasanova multiple times. Get used to it. And today we are joined by a very, very, very special guest. The one, the only, Rebecca Guttentag. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I feel like that hyped me up more than I deserve, but I'll take it.
Hey, I used to be an MC. That was one of the things that paid some of the college bills. So, hey, I'm very good at it. How's your day going so far? How have you been?
It's been busy. We're finally getting some sunlight here in LA. And I remember, the whole lead up of May, gray, June, gloom. I'm like, I just want sunlight. I want it to be warm again. This is awful. Isn't it supposed to be summer? And then the sun comes out and I'm like, oh, wait, no, I'm going to die in this heat. Put me back inside. I'm going to burn to a crisp if I'm out here for more than 5 seconds.
Okay, so I got to ask you the most important question I'm going to ask at any point in this podcast recording.
Oh, boy.
How do you deal with LA traffic?
A lot of podcasts. A lot of my car is old too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a fancy connect to Bluetooth. I've got one of those plugs into the old cigarette lighter thing, Bluetooth.
Me too.
Connectors. Yeah. So I had a phone stand, but again, California is hot. I'm sure Hawaii is very similar. So I had a phone stand, but it melted off the track. So I got one that went into the vent, and then that one got brittle and broke. So now I've MacGyvered one of those clamp-on robot arm, kind of bendy arm things that I've just twisted up into a circle. So I have my phone kind of jiggling along, playing music, occasionally cutting out, but it works. As long as I have something playing, it works.
Okay. I was just saying, because the when I was in LA last year, just the traffic, I don't know how you guys do it.
It's bad.
And out here in Hawaii, we complain about a 15 to 20 minute drive to the other side of the island, it's gonna take forever. But it's that's nothing compared to LA traffic.
If it's under an hour, I'm like, that wasn't bad. My mom was in San Diego for a conference, and I went to go meet her, and she's like, I'm so sorry making you drive all the way down here just to see me for 2 days. I'm like, Mom, it's 2 hours, 2.5. That's a good audiobook. That's fine. I feel like it's very Stockholm Syndrome. Because I grew up on the East Coast where very similar, it's 15, 20 minutes. That's a lot. I came here and I was like, I guess I can let a good chunk of my day, a third of my waking hours go to driving around. Why not?
Okay. So originally you're from the East Coast. What was it like there, and what brought you to LA?
Oh, I've globetrotted, I think. I started so first of all, you mentioned to me earlier you're a military kid. I was a military kid too, technically. I had physician parents who were in the Air Force. So was born abroad in Okinawa, Japan. Moved back to the States when I was like 3, went to college in Ohio, then went to school for a year in Japan, then came back to Ohio, then went back to Japan, then came back to California because of grad school. And then I kind of got into this games thing, and it was like, well, you either want to stay in California or go to Seattle. Which of the cities do you want? San Francisco, LA, or Seattle? And I was like, well, at least LA's got good weather most of the year.
Yeah, Seattle's weather sucks. I lived there when I worked for Microsoft, and I'm just like, no wonder you're all depressed.
Like, I like rain, don't get me wrong, especially being here in LA. Anytime it rains, I'm like, praise be. But no, if I had to deal with, there's no good balance. It's like Seattle is too wet, LA is too dry, there's no middle ground. So you pick your poison.
Yeah. Okay. So, you're working in the game industry now. You're working with Riot. Can you give us like a rundown? You can take however long you want. The show is yours right now.
Yeah, you mean like how I got into it, or what I do,
Yeah,
or
let's
all of the
all
above?
of it. Let's step in the DeLorean and let's go. Let's go.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, I lived abroad in Japan for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I was working on the JET program, and I was teaching English, but while I loved it, I knew that's not what I wanted to do forever. And I was a gamer growing up. I had my PlayStation, I had my Nintendo DS, never had a GameCube, which meant I lost out on a lot of stuff, but my little niche was great. Um, and as I was kind of reaching the end of my JET term, I was like, I'd like to get into games, so I guess I translate. And I was an okay translator. I was not a good translator.
Mm-hmm.
So did not find stuff. And again, I'm running near the end of my period. I'm like, do I have to go back home with no job? Do I have to, like, how am I going to do this? And I had a friend who had returned a year before me and was like, yeah, I'm going to grad school for localization project management. And I was like, localization? And it was this moment that kicked in of like, threw me back 10 years to me being in very early high school, reading an article by one of the Capcom localization managers
Mm-hmm.
talking about localizing the Ace Attorney series of games. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that being really cool, but that's not a real job. It is a real job, as I am proof of now. But I said, okay, I'll look into this grad program. It has partnerships with the JET program. Let's see what this is about. But I didn't have high hopes because I'm like, this is coming in like June and the school year starts in August. And they said, no, that's okay. We take applications until July and you'll hear from us in like 2 weeks. So hear from them I did. Went to grad school for localization project management, which is essentially, how to explain this? If we think about, especially in the field of games
Mm-hmm.
and game development, developers are going to be making a game in that base language that they are working in. So, for a company here in the US, it's usually English is the main language that the devs are thinking in, that everything is marketed towards. But, a great share of their market might not just be in that single sole language.
Yeah.
So, localization in general in the games industry is making sure that you are not just translating the words that the devs wrote or that the writers wrote and translating the scripts, but really making sure that the entire ecosystem that houses that is ready and able to go into all of these different markets.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to this program. I made games kind of my niche focus. I managed to end up after graduation working in a and there's my dog making sounds in the background. I'm sorry if you can hear that.
Nope, I don't hear anything.
Good. She wants a moment in the spotlight. No, but I ended up at what we call a vendor side company, where I was the go between these bigger companies that can't have full headcount internally for every single language, every single translation. Um, can't hire someone for narrative, translation, and marketing. So they look to outsource that work to translators who work independently. So I ended up doing that work for about a year and a half. Someone who I was connected to through the school that I went to reached out to me randomly and was like, "Hey, we have an opening and for a localization producer, and I've seen kind of what you've been doing. I think you'd be great." And I said, okay, yeah, I've been at this LPM localization project management thing for like a year and a half. I'm not ready for this, but I'll throw my hat in the ring. And somehow they chose me. And I've been here working at Riot and as a localization producer for about 2 years now, ever since.
Wow. What is like a typical week for you, like a work week? What's a typical, or actually a typical day and typical work week? What's that like?
Yeah. So being a global company, I work here in LA, which is where our central office is situated. But we have global offices all around the world. And even those global offices, as they handle the different languages that we go into and different publishing teams that we partner with, those translators may also be scattered to all different places. So a lot of my work is, I work here in central LA, but I'm working across time zones. We have testers in certain regions. We have these two trying to steal the spotlight.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
We've got our testers in multiple regions. We've got our translators and our language teams in other regions. So a lot of my work is kind of parsing my day based on the time zone that I need to work with. So early in the morning, it's catching up on sort of the hiccups, all of the things that happened overnight that our linguists or our regional language teams or regional publishing teams need to be unstuck from now that the central team is coming online. As we get further into the day, I'm working more with my testers. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Love when just a random thing hits the back of your throat.
I know, right? You're fine.
And I did not mute myself.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Great. Cool. Cut this out in post. Oh, man. So I'm working with we'll take that back. So like I said, morning is catching up with the regional teams. Midday is checking in with the testers in our main testers office, making sure that they're able to access the game builds, that they are unstuck in making tickets to report issues, that we understand the what features are available for them to start testing. And then, my afternoon into the later hours of the evening ends up moving more towards my personal time with the development teams.
It happens. I
love this.
This
is so fun.
It's organic. It works.
It's organic. Yeah. So the afternoon is spent more with the developers who are located centrally. These are the people who are actually in the office, so I can work more directly with them, make myself available to them to understand what our testers and linguists need, what kind of things are upcoming, how we can best plan and strategize the scope of our test teams, the scope of how much manpower we'll need from the translators, especially since a lot of our teams work across our products.
Okay. One of the I definitely want to touch on this. So when it comes to the localization process, and I know there's like, I just like to say fake outrage, but like, like when they're like, oh, you're completely changing the context and meaning of it.
I've never heard the argument before.
Right. But it's interesting to me because I feel like people don't understand you cannot do just literal translations. You have to make it fit within the context of wherever the the region, demographic, whatever it is, it cannot be just literal, because you got to have the cadence, the flow. It has to be tangible to something of where people are, and it's almost like that gets lost. So, like, what are your thoughts when people want to have the fake outrage about that? I'm just gonna call it what it is.
Oh
It's
yeah.
fake outrage.
No, I'm glad you're saying it because I feel like I always have to be like, it's a very difficult issue, but no, it's true. There have been very badly done localizations, and I get it, but there is something to be said about, everyone thinks they want a literal translation because there is a sanctity that people perceive the original language and the original author's writing to have. And
Mhm.
as a personal writer myself, I totally understand and get that. Um, but there's something, the writing itself exists in a space that, we talk about kill your darlings, death of the author. Um, once the words are out there, what is their main intent? Their main
Mhm.
intent is to engage the audience and to affect them in some way,
Mhm.
whether it is narratively to engage them in a story, or whether it is, even the most technical text, it has to be formatted, written in a way that speaks to the personal understanding and even sometimes cultural know-how of the people that it is targeting.
Yeah.
So, we have a lot of examples of ways that we've had to adapt our translations to make that happen because a statistic that I quote so many times, all the time, within Riot is that on average for most of our games, like I said, we're making this game in English. Most of the developers are making our games in English, but 85% of the player base is not playing in English. So you can make all the references, you can make all the puns, and those are very important references and puns for the English speaking audience. And
Mhm.
it really speaks to those players' experience. But if you just wrote, directly translate that for someone else, you're losing that oomph that it
Yeah.
has. So, wouldn't it make so much more sense to be able to target that audience's needs and that audience's humor, that audience's cultural know-how?
Yeah.
So, we have an example. Gosh, I'm going to misquote the line, but even in just League of Legends, there's a Galio skin line
Mhm.
where he talks about uh, having pineapple on pizza, right? And of course, to a lot of us, pineapple on pizza is the worst thing.
I
It's
was about
supposed
to
to
say
be like
you're gonna trigger people with that.
I like it. Listen,
I do
I like
too.
it, but it is a controversial opinion. So he says, here in hell we serve pineapple on pizza, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, oh gosh, wait, no. I have misdone it. I've said the pun first. In English. He said, here in hell we put raisins in cookies, or all cookies are raisin. And so here in America, everyone's like, yeah, raisin cookies suck. Again, there are some people who like it. I'm not one of those ones.
I'm not either.
But in the but the reason I accidentally showed my hand is that for the Italian audience was like, well, raisins and cookies isn't that big of a deal. To them, we had the translation more targetedly say, here in hell we serve pineapple on pizza. So to an Italian, that is something that would happen in Italian hell. But it's those sorts of things. Making sure that, of course, we can directly translate it, and of course, maybe they'll understand the meaning. But it's not going to have the same impact, the same visceral impact as telling an Italian that they have to eat pineapple on pizza, as good as it is.
Mhm. Okay.
So there's a lot of examples of that. But I think we've all had, and this was something for me as someone who really enjoyed Japanese games growing up. Um, there was a time before I spoke Japanese or even really knew culturally anything about Japan. And if I had gotten some games, and there were a lot of games actually that I tried to engage with at a young age that were a little bit above my level because they had references and made, you know, allusions to things that didn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
Um, but then you find those games that have that balance that maybe you play and years later you realize, oh my God, that wasn't in English originally? Wait a second, that was totally developed in a totally different language with totally different references, and I had no idea. That's when you really feel like, okay, they understood me. And that's why I was able to engage with this so much. And that's kind of what we aim for.
Yeah, it's just, being on the creator side, I feel like, and I think I used this example recently with another guest I had on the show. I say, I feel like I'm kind of like sitting in the middle of a seesaw because I see on the creator side the fake outrage, which is done for clicks, which is how a lot of people get their revenue. Not calling out any creators or anything. I'm just saying, like, I get it. I understand it. You take nothing and just blow it up into something, and you get people clicking on it. Very
Yeah.
dangerous because then you set precedents that a lot of people have to follow. If
outrage bait.
Oh my goodness. Oh, so yeah. Anyway, back on topic. So I sit in the middle. I see the creators who do that, who look at it and they fake outrage. But then I also see the industry side where I'm like, but that makes sense over here. Why don't you get it? Is it because I'm sitting in the middle, or is it because, like, what is it? Like, and sometimes I feel like because I'm starting to lean so much closer to the industry side, because so many of my friends work in the industry and I partner with so many brands and collaborations and pay partnerships and such. I understand, like, what they're doing makes sense from a business perspective, from translating things to make it make sense for the region. And I'm like, why don't you guys as creators and even consumers, why do you not get that? And I feel like maybe I'm out of touch. I don't know.
And I get it. We've seen a lot of advancements in how closely teams can work together globally over the past few decades. The 80s and 90s were rife with all sorts of terrible translations. A winner is you. All your base are belong to us. Those kinds of things, because it was someone got handed a script at some level of fluency with the language and was just told translate because there was no other option. And
you want a good one?
The way that the industry,
You want a good example? Fatal Fury 2. Terry Bogarts is Wubba Wubba, we're in the pink today. What does that mean?
Someone saw their moment and was like, this is a line that everyone says, not just me. But yes, there were so many instances of that because, someone creates a game, someone becomes the licensor or publisher of it and just hands off the script, and there's no communication. And there are a lot of people who I think still see the industry as being these separate islands of, publishing communication. But especially in my experience, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
There are things that fall through. There are tight deadlines that mean that maybe we don't have as much time for back and forth. But it is it's a team effort, seeing that. And this is where my role comes in a lot, because my role is to make sure that linguists have enough visibility and understanding of the intent from the central side, and that the people on the central side understand what complications they might be facing, why it's difficult for them to understand, a single sentence out of context, and how that single sentence can have so many different meanings. I think about, we've had examples of like a single bit of text coming into the translation tool saying exit. It's like, all right, in what context? Is this an exit sign on a door? Is this like exit a menu? Is this there's all sorts of different ways that even with the most normal words we can think of, there might be, that might be that one case where someone didn't know where this text was going to go. And then months later, someone opens up a menu and is like, haha, the sign above the door says, like, quit a menu. How could this have happened? When there are systems in place to allow for all these teams to communicate and get that meaning and understand the intent and test it in context, that's when you create a seamless experience. And it's hard. And like I said, deadlines don't always allow for it to happen as smoothly as you want. And there are always hiccups. But, when it comes together, you want that person who's playing in French to look at the game and say, heck yeah, this was made for me. Just the same way that someone in Korea looks at the game and says, oh my God, they were speaking directly to me. That's the grand idea.
And that's the thing that's also very interesting is, like, I feel like even in 2024, a lot of people still don't understand how big game development is. They think it's, oh, so this guy, I can't even think of the guy who created the Souls genre. Escaping my head. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, people think, oh, this one person created it. No, there's a whole team.
Yep. Yeah, Miyamoto. Everyone's like, yes, he made the entirety of, oh my God. Now I'm calling myself, I'm like, Mario.
Zelda.
Cut this out. Cut it in post.
I know, right?
But no, we love to attribute a single person to a single idea to a single game. And it's like there are so many hands touching things.
Yeah.
And there's so much that happens behind the scenes. The game that I work on, we recently just announced that we're going into consoles. And I saw, of course, I was scraping social media, watching all the comments come in on videos, and I saw people being like, I can't believe it took this long. All they had to do was like change a couple menus and make, buttons and, keys on the keyboard into buttons, right? I'm like, you have no idea. There were so many things that had to happen behind the scenes to make this experience work, not even just on a technical level of like this button do this thing, but like how the system processes that, how you get the, as fine tuned of an experience on a mouse with joysticks, how all of these things come together and how we can even prepare the system to handle all of these languages and publishing on new first party platforms. It's crazy how much has to happen and how much talking goes on behind the scenes to make things work.
Where do you think, and you can be as brutally honest as you want, like we like brutal honesty over here, but why do you think there is this assumption from the average consumer, that this is just easy, they just need to do this? Why do you think that they're so quick to write things off as being easy?
It's funny having been a fan of games to then working on them, because as a fan, and especially as a fan from a few decades ago, you see there was a time that I really remember from the mid 2000s where it was like a new big genre defining game was coming out like every single week.
Yeah.
And people find their niche that they like. And it was like, all right, I've explored this game and had my fun with it. And there's another one just like it. Wow. So we were seeing such a frequency of these things coming out. And I think as time has gone on, though, the industry has evolved. We're seeing so much more complexity added into games. We're seeing these, it's not just a side scroller Mario game. You're suddenly seeing, like, even the more recent Mario games, you're seeing full 3D environments. You're seeing, all this new engine level complexity being added in that takes time. And even, to the point that I was saying earlier, there is more cross collaboration between central teams and all of their regional partners.
Yeah.
We've introduced esports into the game.
Yeah.
And esports is its own new ecosystem. So, and all of these decisions that get made have to, be married with each other, have to play off each other in the larger ecosystem of the game itself.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of times people say, well, game is make asset, make thing move, make it go, make it do, fun power move. That's my story. But there's such a complex web of decision making and making sure that all features are married in a way that comes together into one cohesive thing.
Mhm.
That takes time. It takes so much time and effort, especially as we make games into these grander and grander experiences. So I think people, especially if they came up in those days where, and I will say even today, there are so many indie studios that make little smaller experiences, and there's new ones of those coming out day after day after day.
Yeah.
So it can feel like, well, I'm hopping from one experience to the next. I'm seeing all the cool things happen. Why is it taking so long for this one game to evolve to the same level? And it's like, well, the industry's always changing. Everyone's learning from each other. Decisions are made, decisions are rescinded. You move in one direction, you pivot to another. You try one thing out and it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Or you get to the play testing and you realize your players hate it.
Yeah.
And so you have to scrap everything and start all over. There's so much more that goes on in, like, if you're imagining the iceberg, it's like what you actually get as the release is so small compared to everything that happened to make it happen underneath.
Yeah. I did a reaction.
Edit it out. Get it out of here.
I know. So I did a reaction to the M. Bison reveal. And a lot of the comments that I got on the TikTok upload that I did was that, oh, why are they charging DLC for characters that should be in the base game? And game, this is just proof that gaming as a whole, the industry is dead. And I'm just like, how do you come to such a extreme? The number one entertainment medium in the world, multi-billion-dollar thriving industry. Granted, layoffs and all that stuff is happening, which is unfortunate. But like, how do you feel that it's a dying industry when it's so rapid? Like, I feel like people struggle with seeing things outside of their own perspective. I understand if you're a consumer, you're just looking, hey, this game, this controller, I buy it, I want it to work, that's it. But you don't realize everything that goes behind it. Market research analysts, play testing, localization, error testing, the voice acting, the animators, everything. And trying to make all that cohesively fit into one thing. You don't see all that. You just say, hey, product, I have. That's it. It's
Yeah. No, and there's kind of I get what you're saying, because there's kind of a weird paradox where it's like, because there's so much coming out at one time, it's like you have a buffet of food.
Yes.
But the industry evolves so rapidly and trends come so quickly that you start to see a lot of games popping up with the same theme. I mean, God, what was it? Like, I feel like it's now forever ago, but there was the era of battle royales. Every game coming out was a battle royale.
Yes.
Every single game was something trying to play off the PUBG ecosystem, that niche. And then that kind of faded out. Then you had something like Among Us come out, and every game wanted to be, or every new game that was popping up was trying to get in on that social kind of hide and seek sort of feeling of a game. So you see these trends come up, and I'll say I've had my own frustration sometimes where I have very, I have tastes, and I'm very comfortable in those tastes of the kind of games that I enjoy. And you'll go through these periods where you're not seeing those games come up because everything coming out is a new hero shooter, or is a new battle royale, is a new something or other.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going, ugh, the industry's cooked because everyone's copying everyone and it's all the same slop. But it's very easy to kind of get trapped in that vision when you're not looking at all the trends coming forward or that have come before it and are continuing to come. We're discovering new ways to innovate. For every genre that gets way too big and then kind of falls off, it has its revivals. It has its things that take that idea and innovate on it. I think there's so much creativity in this space and so many areas. And of course, there's gonna be duds. There are gonna be things that flop. There are gonna be cheap recreations of big exciting games just to cash in on that niche being popular. But it also means that there are so many avenues that people are exploring what makes those games tick.
Yeah.
You know, the reason we saw things like the Among Us social games pop up so frequently in the past few years is because, well, we had a period of time where everyone was at home alone. And we saw so much innovation in the space of people saying, well, how can I connect with people when I can't go out and see them? And, you know, we see these little industry blips pop up, fall off, pop up, fall off. And I think that there's just still so much more out there that we haven't explored, or so much that we can revisit from the past that as bleak as it can look at times when your single niche that you really like isn't having its moment, there's so much potential for the future.
Yeah. It makes me think of like again, this is me looking at the consumer reaction, but like when the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series dropped, actually, it dropped like at the beginning of the pandemic. And it's like people, and I still see this argument where people are like, they should have delayed the consoles because there are not that many games on it. And I've tried, and I don't know if I just don't care anymore because I'm like, I explained this is common sense. How do you not get this? Pandemic affected game development on a astronomical, not monumental, astronomical level. Across.
Could be both. Monumentally astronomical.
Right. You know, like it I'm like, what do you guys expect? Like, why do you think that some games are still going to PS4, still going to Xbox One? Because people were at home, some people lost their jobs, people didn't have money, and companies are still for profit. They still have to make a revenue. So yeah, we're gonna pour it over there. Well, why buy it on PlayStation 5 if I can get it on PS4? Then buy it on PS4. You know, like.
Yep. It's so funny too, because I remember when the PS3 came out, it was still PS2 back. Some of them were PS2 backwards compatible. And then the PS2, I think they only stopped making PS2 games. I feel like it was within the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Like early. Yeah. Like people were still making, okay, maybe 5 years. The past 5 years have been a blur. So maybe a little bit before that, but into the late 2010s, they were still making PS2 games because, you know, there was still a market for it. And there is that weird balance of like, how do you balance making people flock to your new system without completely alienating the people who can't afford your bright, shiny new system? I mean, I know that I saw, like I said, our game recently announced that we're going to console and we're doing PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series SX. And I saw people in comments saying, well, what about PS4? And then people responding to that being like, you know, the PS5 is 5 years old now. And I'm sitting there like, I guess it is. I guess it is. But it's true. It's a weird balancing act to say, when do I go from one system to the next? And I will say I love my PlayStation 5, but it is my very expensive PS4 backwards compatible machine.
Yes. It's very much that for me.
And I love it dearly.
You know, and it's just interesting because, like, you know, there's all the rumors going around where people are like, oh, well, We're going to get a PlayStation 5 Pro. Why would PlayStation do that? Or we're going to get a new Xbox. Why would they do that? And again, this is me, like, consoles since the beginning have always done mid-generation refreshes. We had it with the original Nintendo. We had it with Super Nintendo. Sega did multiple with the Genesis and Saturn. PlayStation 2 had the regular and had Slim. PlayStation 3 had various launch models, the Slim, Super Slim, PS4, PS4 Slim, PS4 Pro.
Yeah.
It's not new.
It's not new. It's not new. No, and I get it. It's frustrating when you're like, "Oh man, I just upgraded, and now we're on to the new fun shiny thing." There is always like that kind of weaning off period.
Yeah.
So sometimes we just got to be a little more patient.
Yeah.
Especially when I remember waiting in those queues for the like Sony store opening up for my PS5.
Oh,
I remember that I was waiting. I followed a specific Twitter account that was only there to flag and say when a new PlayStation store like restock happened so that you could flood to the queue. And I remember I was waiting in a queue like all day and like did not get in. So I was like, oh, all right, go to bed. Or I'm like about to go to bed. And I just am scrolling something and I see, oh, Amazon's got PS5s. This is at like 12:30 in the morning. And I'm like, I guess I'll check it out. I bet they're already sold out. And they were not. So I had to kind of sit there in my bleary, I was just about to go to sleep phase and be like, am I ready to drop money on this? But if I don't drop money on this, it'll be gone. I dropped the money. I was like, it's fine. It's a late 3-month late birthday gift to me.
Okay, so then that makes me want to ask you, like, what are your thoughts on? Because again, I see this also with consumers and also the influencers that push this narrative of, oh, new game is coming out. Don't buy it at launch. Don't pre-order it. Just wait for it to go on sale. And then people, I've noticed this. Here's the hypocrisy of this whole trend, this train of thought. And no, I'm not a paid shield. Yes, I'm a PlayStation partner, a Ubisoft partner, Xbox partner. Yes, I have all these things.
I'm not a paid shill.
I'm not paid shill. They have not written me a check for anything. So until I get a check, I'm not on the payroll. Anyways, so the hypocrisy of this line of thought is the same people who think that they'll get it when it's heavily discounted. And then they're like, oh man, this game is great. How come it's not getting any support or DLC?
I know. It's another one of those weird balancing acts, right? Because I've been burnt by doing a pre-order for a game that looked great, and then I got it and was like, oh, okay. Or the pre-order bonus, it was like, oh, it comes with an art book, and I'm like, oh, I love those little art books in the little metal tin case. And then you open up the art book, and it's like, here, it's just like the tiniest little. We've made a little hardcover this thick book, and when you open it up, it's like all of the same art, like the CG renders of the characters. It's like, oh, great. It's not even like development sketches or any sort of like behind the scenes stuff. It's just the art that I could look up on the website and print off using my printer. Okay.
Wait,
like
you
I've
have
been
a printer?
burnt like that.
You have a printer
No.
in this day and age?
I borrow my neighbor's printer. Because I still have neighbors who have printers, and they're the real ones you got to keep around. But it's the thing where, I think that there has been an over-reliance sometimes in the industry on pre-order sales and then not really advertising games as well as they should, because, a lot of people have been burned by buying pre-order for something only to get the game and be like, this isn't really the experience I was being billed. But that being said, I find for me that, like I said earlier, I'm very comfortable in my niches of games that I like. I have a lot of JRPGs that I really like. I'm a big like mystery, visual novel kind of fan, and I love a good strategy game in the vein of like your Fire Emblems, your Ogre Battles, etc. So
you like Ogre Battle?
I'm not good at it.
But you like it. Oh, we're gonna be besties.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yes, I love those TRPG SRPGs. I'm not good at them, but I like them.
Oh, I saw too. But I understand. I understand.
Yeah. And that's my other gripe with the game industry. Listen, I'm forever a stan of the idea that it's like not everyone who plays a game needs to be really good at it. And in fact, you can still be a gamer, someone who calls themselves an enthusiast of games and be very bad at them. And that's okay because you're someone who enjoys it and that's what matters. And that's why I think we do need different difficulty levels. And that's why I'm a defender of games that are like, here's story mode. I'm like, it's not for me. I won't play it, but I like that you're including it for the people who want to still enjoy the game.
Yes. Yes.
All right, there's my rant.
Yes.
But to my other point, there are a lot of games where, in those subgenres that I really enjoy, those are the ones that I'll look at and be like, okay, I think I know this company and I know what they've, what kind of pre-orders they've done in the past. I'm happy giving them that extra money to really make it count. And same thing for like, this is a new one in the genre, but it's a smaller studio. I like I like what they've got for their pre-order bonuses. And from what I've seen of the game, I think this will be really good. I'm happy to put a little bit extra if it means boosting them up. But I'm very picky and choosy with that. Right. I recently had a game that I very much kind of regret not going in on the pre-order bonus for, because it was one of those things where I was like, it's new. Maybe I should hold back. What if I don't like it? So I skipped out on getting the pre-order bonus. But then, so the game was Unicorn Overlord. Have you heard of this? If you are a strategy, I see a face.
I missed out on that pre-order bonus too.
Same. And that was the thing, is I was like, I love Vanillaware. I trust Vanillaware, but like, do I need this pre-order? And so I skipped out on getting the pre-order and just kind of thought about getting the regular version. But then they released the demo and they were like, would you like, and this is another point I want to stick in, I think more games need to do demos like Unicorn Overlord did, which is you have full access to the beginning of this game, but you've got 4 hours to do it. You can we'll pause the countdown when you're in the menu so you can mess around, you can get used to this system, go wild. But at the end of that timer, that's where your demo experience ends, but you can pick it up if you get the game. I played that demo and I was like, I really should have gotten this pre-order bonus. Oh, I really should have. So it came with a card game too that they made just to mimic the style of gameplay. I was like, I want that so bad.
Yeah, and it's like crazy because like when I finally, because I got a review copy of the game and I reviewed it, absolutely loved it. I was telling people like this is like one of my games of the year, and everyone's like, "No, you're crazy." Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but like when I wanted to go back and get that, and then I look at it and then eat, the scalpers. That's a whole other topic. But the scalpers just really they got it, and it's like over $200 now, and I'm just like, I can't. I just can't.
I would hope. I think something that I wish more companies would do is that they'd sell like parts of the pre-order, like remake them again, sell them as merch.
Yeah.
Because then if you had the people who really liked your game, but that's a whole side of the industry of like creating merch that I don't have as much visibility in, so I might be talking out of my ass. They're like, you fool! You think we can just go and make more copies of the card game? She's so naive. That's how I talk to people who think they know about localization. That's how I sit behind my computer with my glass of brandy going, you fools, you think you understand?
Oh, okay. So I have to ask you this, because I know you said recently your game's coming. I know what game it is. I don't know if we want to say it or not, but
I can say it.
Okay. So like it's coming. It is coming to console, and how is it being in your position as as a localizer, having to sit and watch social media and what people say, because
Oh, it's so fun. There's, well, for every person, like it's kind of like what you said before. There are some people who there's a whole spectrum, and you're going to find someone at every end of the spectrum. You're going to find the people who are like, "Yes, Riot Games can do no wrong. This is exactly what we knew was going to happen. It's amazing." You have the people at the other end of the spectrum being like, "They're so cooked for this. This is going to drop. No one's going to play it. I can't believe they wasted manpower and energy on this." And so I think being able to kind of have a separate, again, I engage with the social media comments and everything. I look at it, I don't interact. And I think it would be very different if I was the kind of person who was interacting, but it's a good litmus test, for how well your game is doing, and sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it really stinks to see people, especially when they don't have that full context that we were talking about before, because to that point that I made, people saying, "Oh, they just remapped a few buttons, it's that easy." It's like, you don't know all the pain that went on behind the scenes. You don't know, people will dig into a specific feature and be like, "This is so stupid, I can't believe like this wasn't made a million years ago." And it's like, you have no idea how much iterating had to go in on this, how much we debated on it, how much confusion there was about the milestones related to it. There's just so much that happens. So I I think I stay back and put that distance so I'm not directly engaging, and that makes it okay. I think the more difficult part for me is when you're sitting there sitting on something that is about to come out and being like, "I can't talk about this. I can't say anything." I know, like, I'll be on social media even before. So I haven't said it before, but I work on Valorant, and Valorant is the one that we just announced going to console. And I remember, like, I'll go in and check just Valorant on Twitter or on Reddit and see what the fans are talking about. And I was seeing people saying, like, "Oh, console's never going to happen." But other people saying, like, "Wouldn't it be crazy if they announced console at Summer Games Fest?" And I'm sitting there like, "Oh, I want to share this with people. I want to click on this post. I want to do these things." But there are people out there who are like, who through some IP magic are saying, "This person works at Riot and is clicking this link. So that means that something is happening behind the scenes and console is going to come. And that's how we leak everything." It's those kinds of like instincts to be like, "No, I can't engage. I can't say anything. I can't search this. I can't look because someone will figure it out." Because I'm the kind of person who loves a spoiler. I'm the kind of person who loves to like dig in, and I'm like, I get, but not for my game. Not for my game. I'll eat the leaks and spoilers and feel very bad for the people working on the things that are leaked and spoiled, but I will still engage and hate myself for it. Just not my game.
And that's one of the things that so I have two connected yet separate questions. So I'll go with this one first. How do you how do you, as someone in the gaming industry, deal with the leaks and the leakers? Because now I'm telling you, from the content creator side, that is a whole category of people that just talk about leaks. And I find it mind blowing that there are people who will do leak information and they still get to work with the company. And I'm like, how? How are you doing that?
Oh yeah.
And it's like, that's years of people working on something that's just gone. And the leakers and the creators who cover it don't care. And I'm like, that's
No.
blood, sweat, and tears went to that. But anyway.
And it's something that I didn't get really as much until being on the inside, watching that happen to something that I was working on, because you think like, yeah, but they want the news to break eventually anyway. This is just building hype. I've had so many conversations with, my family being like, this was such a terrible like process working on this, because right at the 11th hour, like an hour before this CG was supposed to go live, someone somehow got into our system, found it, and leaked it. And I'll have my dad be like, "Yeah, but you were going to release it in an hour anyway. What's the big deal?" It's like, but you don't understand how much planning goes into that, how much hype we were going to build around a specific moment. We have so many times, especially on Valorant, where we're, trying to tie in a hype moment in a esports tournament to a hype reveal of a character or a new map. And those are supposed to go hand in hand so that we're giving the people at the, in the arena a really cool, unique experience, that they were the first people to see this. And when you leak it ahead of time, then all of that is ruined. And not only that, but all the hard work of the people who went into making sure that that timing would happen perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
It's they're sitting there going, well, I guess screw me. And it sucks, because there is that, as someone who, like I said, has games that I really care about, and I sit there going, God, I want to know information about this. God, I want to know that I have hope that this cool new game in this franchise I love is about to come out. And I see it like a little leak saying, oh, they're actually going to announce something at this thing in 2 days. There's the part of me that's like, yes, I'm so excited. I can't wait. But there's the other part that's like, and there goes like a whole team of people at that company sitting there saying, well, how did this leak out of our system? Which of our vendors do we have to look into? Which of our pipelines has the ability to be hacked? Who accidentally, because so many times it is accidental.
Mm-hmm.
But so many other times it's people being, malignant agents.
Yeah.
So it's rough, because you put so much blood, sweat, and tears into like making that perfect moment come together. And it's like you sit there going, well, the fans are happy. They're excited about this. But just imagine how much more exciting it would have been had everything fallen in place.
Yeah, that makes me think of like the that actually happened yesterday with the Street Fighter and Bison trailer, because that was not supposed to have come out until today, like tonight, and somehow PlayStation Taiwan was like, boom, and it was up for a whole hour, and then like, and I won't name names, but I got a lot of text messages and emails. People were like, we know you cover this. We know you cover the series. We know who does what. Please don't say anything. And
don't engage.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, we get emails constantly being like, run books for a release. And, the run books have to say, and in the case of something coming out before we intended, do not engage. Don't put any eyes on it. People are going to see it anyway, but don't be the person pointing them towards it.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It sucks so bad. We've had cases too, and I'll say in particular, it sucks in my specific field, because sometimes you're waiting for, a lot of times, a lot of eyes will turn to localization, because we have to share with all of our regional teams to make sure their, publications go out at the same time across the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy to point fingers and say, well, we're not watching that team specifically. Could it be them? And having to constantly say, no, we're watching our channels. We're watching how we share. If it is them, we'll do a thorough investigation, I promise. But we are working with InfoSec, and I don't think it's coming from us.
Yeah.
And so many times, sometimes it's just an influencer took a picture in the wrong place.
Yeah.
We've had so many instances of having these hype events pre-releasing something, only for someone to have taken, a selfie, but you can see in the reflection of the thing behind them that it shows the big infographic of the new character or something. And it's like, sometimes, what is the quote? A lot of times what you can attribute to malice is usually attributed to stupidity.
Yes.
It happens. So often. Yeah. Someone sets something to release. I mean, the Street Fighter thing, I'm sure it was someone saying, we've set this up and it's supposed to go live at this time, only we didn't convert the time zones properly, or I typed the wrong number in, and suddenly something goes live when it's not intended. there's just so many points of failure for something to go wrong.
Yeah.
Even beyond the agents of chaos who are just trying to leak things to get their follower accounts up.
You know, it was interesting. I'm when I was in IT, I was InfoSec, so I understand how that is, and I don't
Oh,
envy
yeah.
anybody who has to deal with that. But okay, here's the second. Oh, I stopped my microphone. But here's the second part of the unrelated but related question. How do you
Yeah.
feel about the? And I guess I'll give you additional context with this as well. But how do you feel about the power / influence that influencers and creators have over, in many cases, the success or failure of a game? Now, my additional context with that is I look at, we're going to use an example, Konami. A lot of people have a lot of feelings about Konami. Well, they don't make games anymore. They don't do this and da da da. I don't
The
trust them.
pachinko company.
The pachinko company. And I'm over here like, Konami's didn't stop making games. They're just not making games that you want, which is Metal Gear. But they're still making games. But you get people that say, you know, influencers who are like, Konami this, or don't buy this game because it's Konami, or don't buy this game because EA or Ubisoft, or greater example being Silent Hill 2 remake. And the amount of the influencers who built their whole brands around Silent Hill, and they're like, oh, it was great back then. They're never going to make a new game. And then, oh, well, here we go with 5 new games. They're all going to be trash because the original team is not on it. Oh, wait, but Silent Hill 2 Remake has some of the original devs. Oh, that's going to be trash because as you look at that hitting animation for James, and it's just like they put out into the ether this mindset, this idea that is not fully grounded in reality. More often than not, it's outrage, clickbait, fake outrage. But the problem I see with it, and I know I'm going on a elongated way of getting to this point,
Take your time.
but they put this out there, and then the consumer, who doesn't even really know about the process or everything that's going into it, will latch on to what this influencer that they follow says, and it shapes the narrative. It shapes their opinion. I feel, and this is me, and yes, I am quote unquote an influencer, but it terrifies me that influencers have that much power.
Mm.
It can be good, but I'm seeing the trend as an influencer of the destructive nature of it. And it's a destructive nature that is monetized by them. I see it all the time on Twitter. Twitter is yeah. But you can monetize anything, and it doesn't have to be true.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's so interesting about the rise of influencers as the kind of the heat check on games is, before influencer was really a concept, you had game journalism.
Yeah.
And that has slowly, it's not like that's disappeared, but you have kind of a balance of them. And one of them is skewed a lot more. I would say that, with something like influencers, the whole idea of the influencer brand is that they're giving you themselves.
Yeah.
So an influencer take on something is going to usually be that authentic take, that authentic. Yeah. And I'm not going to say some people are very authentic.
Yes.
Sometimes it skews towards a more, monetized mentality. But you get this idea of, the influencer is the one who can talk real to you who gets the hands-on experience and tells you exactly what they think, or who looks at it as an expert and tells you exactly what they think, no holds barred, because they're not paid, in theory, by the corporation. Whereas, and there was a whole trend of game journalism being seen as too corporate because it is more structured. It is more, you're a journalist. You're not, there were a lot of, especially in game journalism, there have been a lot of people who are recognizable names reporting in the industry, but they're reporting not as themselves sometimes, but as a larger publishing agency.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting to watch and see how especially among younger fans who have grown up more so in this influencer zeitgeist, to see them see one as more authentic and real opinions and see the other as more corporate, more like dumbed down, more sanitized, when that same effect is happening. You have it on both sides. There are a lot of corporate people who write for big news sites who are just going to write fluff pieces, or just going to write, a very sanitized, maybe not actually digging in enough review of something. But you have the people who really care and are straightforward and very factual in their reporting. On the other side, you have influencers who are super dedicated to what they are passionate about talking about. And that's how you see them gain fame and then gain the attention of companies who are able to use that as, authentic expression of excitement about the game. But there does become that line occasionally where sometimes there is, too much interplay, and people giving into, giving a fluffier take on something or being more harshly critical if they are incentivized to do so. So it's tricky. I think we see a lot more, with game journalism as an actual, an industry with set kind of rules and standards. It's a little easier to see those and say, okay, well, they have checks and balances for lying or giving something unfactual and having to rescind statements, blah blah blah. And sometimes it's hard to find where that same, we're in such a new world with influencers that it's like, where are we seeing fact checking? Where are we seeing the ability to parse a personal grievance versus actual good hands-on takes on something?
Yeah.
Which matters more? It's kind of the Wild West.
It really is. I've seen instances where, and I've experienced many instances of this, where like I'll talk to someone and they'll be like, well, the only reason I bought this game or I bought this is because, I trust this YouTuber or I trust this influencer because they always shoot straight and they're always saying this. And I'm like, you trust them? And they're like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I? No.
Sometimes you trust them until you see the ad read in the middle and you go, interesting.
And I will say this, I know a lot of the big influencers. I've met them. I've been to many conventions with them. I've been to many after parties. I see a whole different side. So when they'll name certain names and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You trust that person.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And it happens in so many industries.
Yes.
And so I think if I want anything out of, the community at large, and because everyone deserves to be fans of people, everyone deserves to have their favorites and the people that they look at and trust, but it's to approach it with a level of intelligence and skepticism.
Yes.
And also a level of like, we've said earlier, sometimes the best advice really is to just go outside and touch grass. It's very cathartic to fully rag on something, to, tear it to shreds because it feels so good to make you feel like you're on the right side, that you like, oh, I don't care enough about this. Like, this product is dumb and I'm better for thinking that and realizing it. And it's like, let it be. Does it have to be that dramatic?
Yeah. And one of the things, like I try to tell people, like take in, and I feel like critical thinking has been, oh god, especially over the last 8 or so years, probably longer. But critical thinking seems to be something that's going out, where a lot of people want someone to think for them and form their opinions for them. And I'm like, you should have healthy skepticism. So my background is in journalism. My degree is in journalism and psychology, which is funny because I ended up in IT, because when I graduated from college, which was 2008, economy crashed, and I was like, well, shit, I can't go into journalism, so let me go into IT, because I had a friend that got me in, and that's how I got into that. But um, I've always had the mentality of healthy skepticism. Don't trust everything at face value. Ask questions, gain information as best you can to make an informed decision. And it's interesting now being an influencer, working with brands and reviewing games and tech and all this other stuff, where I'll get questions from people where they literally just want me to make the decision for them. And when I review a game, I have a rating scale of, a game is 1 to 5, because I think 1 to 5 is easier than 1 to 10. Because a game can be a 7 or a 6 and have jank, but it can still be fun.
Yeah.
But I, even when I review it, even if I don't like it, I'm okay saying, hey, it wasn't for me, but it could be for you. But now it's like people are not happy with that. They want you to pick one of the extremes. I'm like, it's not that damn serious. It's like,
Yeah.
what do you want? You want a turn based? Go play Octopath Traveler. You want strategy? Please go support Unicorn Overlord and everything that Vanillaware makes, because they are phenomenal.
They're so good.
They're so good. Aegis, was it 13 Sentinels? Aegis was, oh my god, that game was so
My game of the year a couple years ago.
good.
Oh my god.
That game was so good.
I could talk about it for hours.
Right?
But yeah, it's so interesting because, like, if I can tie it back to what I work in,
Yes.
there is no objective truth to any sentence that you can say. There's no true way to translate it, I should say, because every translation is going to differ in some way or another. It's the same thing with, like, there is no, a singularly good way to, like, metric way to score a game, because so many people have so many different personal feelings. Like, there are ways to metrically grade a game. Like, if it is broken, that's a bad game.
Yes.
But for genres, you could toss me into, like, Call of Duty and make me play a bunch of Call of Duty games, and I couldn't tell you what makes them good, what makes them bad to a Call of Duty player. I can tell you what, like, graphically this looks really good and it feels really good, but the people who like that genre are going to have such a wealth of ways to speak about and analyze that genre, and so many different ways to enjoy it. It goes for so many kinds of games. I'm a narrative person, and I've played a lot of games that I've been like, the thing that really mattered to me was how good the story was, how well written the characters were. So, yeah, the gameplay was really clean and polished, but this kind of fell to the wayside for me. But then I'll find someone who plays that exact game, and their thing that they care about is the gameplay, is the, like, very technical way to play the game. And they could say, this is like a 10 out of 10 for me, because everything was perfect in my book, even if the writing was not as solid. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think gets lost when you have, sometimes, with this idea of, like, the singular influence or the singular opinion on XYZ game. So, I hope, like you said, there's that level of skepticism. There's that level of understanding that some people enjoy certain things, some people don't. There are ways to have varying opinions and to look at a game as a whole package and see both the faults and the really good things about it. Because that's how the industry grows.
Yeah. So one final question. And the last question I have for you is what advice or direction would you give to someone who wants to get into localization?
So, obviously, having at least some knowledge of another language is helpful. But more than that, because I'll say I'm Japanese bilingual, and the bilingual part is getting a little bit hairier every day that I'm not using it in my day-to-day language like I was when living there. But what is more important than being able to like fluently speak that language, and even more important than being like 100% cultural know-all for everything that has happened in your culture and every other area you've lived in and every language you've spoken, it's more the plasticity of being able to learn from every other language and culture that you engage in. So, like I said, I speak two languages. It is English and Japanese. But my game that I work on is in 18.
Mm-hmm.
And I I can't, answer very specific questions about if a developer comes to me and says, "We have a bug, Polish is saying that like something here is not working. What is it?" I won't be able to tell them, but I might look at the screenshot that they've taken and I might be able to say, "Well, you know, I think this word is wrapping wrong." So I think the issue you're having is that for some languages, you made this text box to English size, but some languages go a lot longer than English on average. So in the future, the best way for you to make sure you're not getting these issues again, make the text box able to expand or make the text inside the size shrink. That might save you grief in the long run. Having going into recordings for some of our big cinematics, when we're making cut down versions, I can't speak Chinese, I can't speak French, but I know that those have very different grammar structures. So if you're taking a line from the full version of the trailer and you're splicing the English together into a new sentence because yeah, that probably works, well, French has gendered language that maybe you have spliced this language together or this sentence together and you've created a Frankenstein that does not work in French, even though it worked perfectly in English. And the same thing for something like Chinese, the order of how the sentence is matched together would change. So you've probably made a sentence that doesn't even make sense at all because you've just taken random words. Those are the kinds of things that I don't speak these languages but by engaging and learning from my teams and seeing the problems that they face and understanding them,
Mm-hmm.
I'm at least better able to speak for them. And I think that commitment to being the melting pot of all the things that have to come together and conveying that to the people who are making these games all around the world, like trying to come together to make this one game, that's the best thing that you can do, is never stop looking and examining your own culture, your own language, and understanding how others tick.
Yeah.
Very long-winded answer.
No, it's a fantastic answer. Like, I mean, I can give an example that correlates to that. So, as I told you, I'm from Samoa. I speak Samoan. I also am Tongan. I speak Tongan. I speak Hawaiian. And though the phonetics of the three languages are very similar, especially similar in Tongan, so a lot of people don't realize you go back 1,000 years and people, families dispute, boom, whole different island. Anyways, but even though the phonetics are very similar, the sentence structured, cadence, everything is far different. So, like when I got my traditional sleeve done, this is actually three different, which is unusual to get Hawaiian, Samoan, and Tongan all in one.
Awesome.
But having to correlate the in talking to my tattoo because of the traditional tap, and he
Wow.
exclusively spoke in Tongan. So questions I may have had or input, I had to think about it in English. So I think in Samoan, I speak in English, but then I had to translate from Samoan to English, and then from English to Tongan, and I had to restructure it. I'm just like, yeah. So people definitely
Yeah.
understand it's a process.
And I bet you also had to like find new ways to say things because
Yes.
there's no like easy direct like this word equals this word,
Yes.
so these words in this sentence are the same. It's like no,
Yeah.
sometimes I have to totally rewire my brain
Yes.
to go out of the English like patterns.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Yeah.
So
That's so cool.
so actually, I have the last question for you. I like.
Yeah.
Did you have fun?
Did I have fun
Yeah.
in the interview?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even though I had a coughing fit and my dogs were doing their very best to get in on the conversation.
No.
Absolutely.
So, with that being said, is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we go?
Man, I love how the games industry has evolved.
Yeah.
Watching it grow from something that was kind of a weird niche. Like when I was growing up, I played my weird little JRPGs and couldn't talk to anyone at school about it because I was like, it's a weird little niche. I don't like I need to be social, I need to be cool. And watching just how it has become part of daily culture because
Yes.
there's so many varieties. Everyone has touched a game at some point in their life, some more heavily than others. But it's just a new form of media and we're just at the start of it. So, I encourage everyone if you're interested in the industry, do your research, learn, explore the parts that you like.
It is so crazy how, like, you know, I guess they like to call it nerd culture, and I'm like, it's not really nerd culture anymore. It's just
No?
it's just there. It's the norm. But it's very interesting when you look at how we grew up with gaming and anime and music. And at one point,
Anime's another one.
and like how people looked at you. I remember when people called it Japanimation at one point, and you were weird for
Mhm.
liking Dragon Ball and all that. And now you see people walking around with anime shirts, and it's so the norm. And I'm just like, I'm glad we got here, because every time people are like, yeah, I wish we could go back to the past because it was better back then. It was simpler, but it had a lot of
Yeah,
issues, and I
yeah.
would not want to go back and deal with a lot of that.
No, I've seen kids in my local park like just walking around day-to-day clothes and they have like the Tanjiro from Demon Slayer jacket on, just out and about, part of their daily clothes.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love that for you.
Yeah. Mm.
We walked so you guys could run.
Yeah.
We went through the nerd trenches for you guys. We took the cringe blame so that you guys can live cringe and free.
So, where can people find you on social media if you want to plug any of that or plug anything you're working on?
Like I said, I'm an enigma on the internet because if anyone knows who I am, then they'll know all the searching of my games that I've been doing. No, what I will plug is that I work for Riot Games. Very excited about this new horizon for us with Val Console.
Mhm.
And I hope that anyone who's listening who's a fan of our games knows that we love you and thank you so much for all the support. And for anyone who's not a fan of our games, whatever games you're a fan of, I love you for that.
All right. And with that being said, people, that's another episode of the Casanova Podcast. You can catch us on every major podcasting outlet. Shout out to our sponsor, Spotify, for keeping this show going and constantly bringing new people, new eyes and ears, and being one of the first podcasting platforms for video podcasts, and letting us be one of the pioneers of that. So, with that being said, we're going to sign out, and we hope to see you guys on the next one. for your time for listening to this episode of the Kasanova podcast, and one podcast in Hawaii. If you found this episode to be incredibly enjoyable, informative, or if there's anything you gain from it, or any insight, or anything that's good that you really, really enjoyed, make sure whatever platform you're listening to it on, or if you're watching it, leave a comment if that's available on the platform, like it, share it around with someone you think would enjoy it, and give us some feedback, because your feedback is exactly what we need to keep this show going. And if you're wondering what are some ways that you could support the show, we got various ways. We've got Patreon, we have channel memberships over on YouTube, as well as Subscribestar, Coffee, and so much more. Links for everything will be in the description of the podcast, so make sure you go check that out. And with all that being said, I hope you have an aloha rest of your day.
Let them know that I'm next level. I'm a whole new kind of guy. Yeah. Yes, at the top spot in case you forgot. We the ones that got the block hot, bullet got the shot. Yeah.